You think that fancy purple shirt makes you look like you belong here, Grandpa? I don't see you on the list of people who live in this building.
This car is mine, officers say, as is the penthouse I just came down from.
I'm telling you, you stole this car. You're going to the cage, old man. You have been given valid identification and proof of ownership. I want it clear for the record and the cameras. This arrest is unlawful.
Officer Evans.
Every man reaches a point where he must choose between the easy path and the right one.
You think that fancy purple shirt makes you look like you belong here, Grandpa? Officer Dalton's voice cut through the quiet afternoon air of the shopping mall's VIP parking garage. Click. The cold, final sound of steel handcuffs closing around an elderly wrist. Samuel Sterling, 75 years old and healthier than men half his age, didn't move. He just looked at the officer's angry face, then down at the red scratches the cheap metal handcuffs were making on his dark skin. "Your joyriding days are over," Dalton said with a mean smile, pushing the old man against the shiny fender of a vintage 1965 Bentley. "I'm taking you to jail." He had no idea that the man he just accused of stealing a car actually owned the car, owned half the tall buildings in the city, and was the father of Dalton's own boss. What happens when a police officer's prejudice writes a check his career can't cash? Hit that like button and subscribe to see justice served cold. The afternoon sun struggled to penetrate the concrete maze of the shopping mall's VIP parking garage. Down on level P1, reserved for residents of the luxury tower above, the air was cool and still, smelling of expensive concrete and high-quality gasoline. For Samuel Sterling, it was a sanctuary of quiet transformation, a concrete chamber from which he would emerge into the bustling city he had helped build. At 75, he moved with the careful, calm grace of a man who had earned his time. He was a picture of elegant strength, a man made from determination and decades of outworking every obstacle in his path. Today, his goal was simple, a drive to the coast to feel the ocean spray on his face. He sat in the driver's seat of his prized possession, a 1965 Bentley S3 Continental. Its body was midnight blue perfection. Its chrome grille gleamed. The interior was filled with cream-colored leather and beautiful walnut wood. Samuel ran a hand over the smooth steering wheel. He wasn't dressed in the boring uniform of the business world he now controlled from afar, but in the vibrant colors of a life fully lived, a silk shirt the color of the evening sky, perfectly fitted cream pants, and soft Italian leather shoes. As founder and chairman of Sterling Holdings, his signature could change the city's skyline. But here, in his car, he was just a man who loved the freedom of the road. The quiet shattered with the squeal of tires. Samuel's senses, sharpened by a lifetime of tough negotiations, became alert instantly. A police car, Unit 12 Charlie, raced down the ramp, its movements jerky and aggressive. The mall had its own security team who knew every resident by name. This city police car was a rare sight. The police car screeched to a stop, parking diagonally across two spots, its headlights trapping Samuel's Bentley. The driver's side door flew open. Officer Mark Dalton stepped out, about 35, with a thick neck and a severe haircut. His uniform was crisp but seemed too tight, like a container for barely controlled anger. 3 weeks into his transfer from upstate, Dalton saw the city as a dirty place to be cleaned up, where his prejudices could be given a badge and a gun. He looked at the Bentley, then at the man inside, and his crude calculator of stereotypes came to an instant conclusion. Officer Dalton moved with exaggerated swagger, his hand resting on his gun. He didn't walk to the window, he walked to the front of the Bentley, checking the license plate on his radio. Beside him, Officer Evans, a rookie barely a year on the job, stayed by the police car, unease settling on his young face. Samuel watched with an unreadable expression. He had faced hostile business enemies and corrupt politicians. A cop with an attitude was just another Tuesday. He slowly reached for the button to lower his window. Dalton strutted to the open window, leaning down. "This is a nice car," he said. It wasn't a compliment, it was an accusation. "Must have cost you a lot of money." "She's a joy to drive," Samuel replied, his voice smooth and deep, holding no trace of fear. Dalton's lip curled. "I know who lives in this building. Tech billionaires, hedge fund guys, old money. Funny thing is, I don't see you on that list. So tell me, Grandpa, where'd you get the car? This car is mine, officer, as is the penthouse apartment I just came down from. Dalton laughed uglily. Hear that, Evans? He says he's the king of the castle. He turned back to Samuel. Let me see your license and registration. Now. Of course, Samuel said slowly, reaching toward the glove compartment. Hold it. Dalton barked, his hand dropping to his weapon. Slow. Hands where I can see them. Samuel moved with exaggerated slowness, retrieving a leather wallet. He pulled out a valid driver's license and registration card, both clearly showing Samuel Aurelius Sterling, 1000, Galleria Drive, PH1. He handed them to Dalton. The officer snatched them. He glanced at the license, then at Samuel, then at the registration. The facts were clear and undeniable. For a normal officer, this would be the end. But Dalton was not normal. The facts were an obstacle to the story he'd already written. These are good fakes, Dalton said. Really good. Where'd you get them done? You steal the wallet too, or just the car? Officer Evans shifted uncomfortably, opening his mouth to speak, but a glare from Dalton silenced him. Samuel held Dalton's gaze. Officer, I assure you those documents are genuine. My name is Samuel Sterling. I've lived in this building for 15 years. The doorman, Frank, has known me for a decade. You can verify my identity in under 60 seconds. This calm response was like gasoline on fire. You think you can talk your way out of this? Dalton sneered. I'm telling you, you stole this car. You probably waited for someone to leave their keys and now you're taking it for a joy ride. That is an entirely fabricated story, officer, Samuel stated. You calling me a liar? Dalton's face flushed red. I am stating that your theory is incorrect. If you'll allow me to use my phone, I can call my son. He can clear this up. Your son? Let me guess, he's a big-shot lawyer. Well, you can call him from county jail. Get out of the car. Samuel looked at the witnesses gathering, a woman with a stroller, a young man with his phone recording. He made a calculated decision. With slow, dignified movements, Samuel Sterling opened the door and stood up, 2 inches taller than Dalton. Turn around. Hands on the hood now. Samuel complied, placing his hands on the cool hood of his own car. I am complying, officer, but I want it noted for the record and the cameras that I'm doing so under protest. This arrest is unlawful. The only thing unlawful here is you, old man, Dalton grunted, grabbing Samuel's left arm and twisting it viciously behind his back. Sharp pain shot through Samuel's surgically repaired shoulder. He grunted but didn't cry out. Officer Evans stepped forward. Dalton, maybe we should just check the VIN again. Shut up, Evans. He's resisting. I am not resisting, Samuel said, his voice strained. You're resisting by talking back, Dalton shouted. He pulled out handcuffs and slammed the first cuff onto Samuel's wrist, squeezing until the steel bit deep into skin. Click. The sound was sharp, metallic, horribly final. He yanked the second cuff tight, then shoved Samuel against the car. You think your fancy clothes can protect you? Dalton whispered. In my world, you're just another thug going to the cage. He grabbed Samuel by the collar and force marched him toward the police car. As they passed the witnesses, Samuel met the young man's eyes and gave a single nod. Keep recording. The back of the police car smelled of old vomit and fear. Samuel sat upright, his posture perfect despite the cuffs digging into his back, his eyes fixed on the back of Dalton's head. That's how you handle them, Evans, Dalton said, slapping the steering wheel. You establish dominance. These people only understand force. Evans glanced back at Samuel through the wire mesh, seeing the old man's calm dignity, the blood from where the cuffs had broken skin. Mark, he gave you his ID. The address matched. You're not paid to think. The ID was fake. He's a pro. Samuel listened silently, noting every lie, every excuse. These people, the phrase dripped with casual prejudice. The use of force report, cuffing a 75-year-old man who wasn't resisting, it'll get flagged, Evans tried. He was verbally non-compliant, Dalton recited. My uncle's a sergeant in internal affairs. I know how the paperwork works. Samuel shifted his gaze to Evans, the weak point, the man with a flicker of doubt. The police car screeched away, siren whooping dramatically. "So what do you think you'll get?" Dalton asked, glancing in the mirror. "Grand theft auto, resisting arrest, forged documents. That's a good 5 to 7 years." Samuel remained silent, eyes closed in focus. He knew this police station, he'd helped fund its renovation. He knew its chief intimately. He had held him in his arms the day he was born. The 12th precinct was an old brick fortress. Inside, the air hit you first, industrial cleaner, old coffee, and human misery. Officer Dalton shoved Samuel through the back entrance toward the booking desk. Desk Sergeant Henderson looked up from his crossword puzzle. "What did you drag in now, Dalton?" "Caught this one red-handed trying to make off with a vintage Bentley. 75 years old and still joyriding." Henderson eyed Samuel's expensive clothes. "A Bentley?" "Yeah, right. What's the name?" "Tell him your name, Grandpa," Dalton said, slamming Samuel's hand onto the filthy counter. "Sterling. Samuel Sterling. Address? 1000, Galleria Drive, Penthouse 1. Henderson and Dalton shared a look of tired amusement. "I'm just going to put down, no fixed address," Henderson said, typing. "That is falsification of a police report," Samuel stated calmly. "A felony." Dalton pushed Samuel's face toward the counter. "Shut your mouth. Now empty your pockets." Samuel emptied them, a Bentley key fob, a money clip with $100 bills, a black carbon fiber building key card. "Where's the wallet with the fake ID?" "I told you I didn't have one." "Convenient. Let's get your picture, then you can enjoy our accommodations." Samuel stood before the height chart, chin up, looking directly into the camera. The flash popped. "Digital evidence. Permanent." "All right, print him," Dalton ordered. Samuel placed his fingers on the electronic scanner. The machine beeped, then beeped again with a high-pitched tone. On Henderson's screen, a bright yellow box flashed, "System alert. Family link detected." Sergeant Henderson stared at the monitor, annoyed. "Damn it. This piece of junk is on the fritz again." Dalton leaned over. "Family link? What's that?" "Some HR thing. If we arrest someone who's a direct relative of a city employee, we get an alert. It's been messing up all week." He clicked override. The alert disappeared. "Just run him as a John Doe." "It is not a glitch," Samuel said softly. "It's a warning." "The only one who needs a warning is you," Dalton laughed. "Evans, take him to holding." As Evans led Samuel toward the cells, Samuel's mind raced. Family Link, a system his son Michael had personally implemented. They'd been given a chance to pause, to reconsider, and they'd refused. The holding cell reeked of despair. Evans unlocked the barred door. "Officer Evans," Samuel said, his tone fatherly, "every man must choose between the easy path and the right one. You're at that crossroads. What your partner is doing is wrong. You know it. You have a chance to stand on the right side." Evans swallowed hard, looking down the hall where Dalton was laughing. Fear won. He slammed the cell door shut and walked away. Samuel sat on the cold metal bench. He had one phone call coming. He knew the number by heart, a private line that bypassed all dispatchers. The direct line to the man who ran this department, the man who called him Dad. An hour later, a different officer opened the cell. "On your feet. Lieutenant wants to see you." Samuel was escorted to a windowless interrogation room. Seated at the table was Lieutenant Corian, early 40s, a man who'd climbed ranks through political maneuvering. He held a thin folder. "Mr. Sterling," Corian began smoothly, "I've reviewed Officer Dalton's report. It's not looking good. Grand theft auto, forged documents, resisting arrest. You're looking at significant prison time." He leaned forward. "However, I see a 75-year-old man. I don't think you're a hardened criminal. Maybe you were confused. Maybe it was a crime of opportunity." He slid out a pre-printed plea agreement. "I can make the felony charges disappear. We reduce this to misdemeanor unauthorized use. You plead guilty, time served, $500 fine, you walk out in 20 minutes. This whole thing goes away. It was the classic trap, force the victim into admitting a lesser crime to avoid a lawsuit. Samuel looked at the paper, at Corian's smug face, at the dark mirror on the wall where Dalton was likely watching. No, Samuel said. Corian's smile faltered. This is a one-time offer. You're offering me a lie to cover up your officer's crime. My answer is no. I will not plead guilty to anything. What I will be doing is making my phone call now. Corian's mask dropped, replaced by irritation. Fine. Have it your way. The phone's down the hall. Make it quick. The phone was a battered metal box on the wall. Officer Dalton stood nearby, arms crossed, smirking, eager to hear the pathetic call to some overworked public defender. Samuel ignored him. He picked up the receiver, hands steady. His fingers moved over the keypad. He dialed a 10-digit number he'd known by heart for 40 years, a private line that bypassed the entire precinct switchboard. The phone rang once. Michael Sterling. The voice was crisp, professional, commanding. Dalton's smirk widened. Michael Sterling sounded like a lawyer. Michael, Samuel said, his voice calm and familiar. It's Dad. Pause. Pure stunned silence. The professional tone vanished, replaced by urgent concern. Dad, what's wrong? Are you okay? Where are you? I'm fine, son. But there's been a misunderstanding. I'm at the downtown precinct. The 12th. Another pause, heavier, colder. The 12th. In booking? That's right. An Officer Dalton arrested me in my parking garage. He believes I've stolen my own car. A Lieutenant Corian just tried to convince me to plead guilty to a misdemeanor. Dalton froze. The name, the address, pieces clicked into place, forming a picture of absolute horror. His face went slack, color draining. The voice on the line was no longer a concerned son, it was the chief of police, colder than winter. Stay right where you are, Dad. Don't say another word to anyone. I'm on my way. ETA 5 minutes. The line went dead. Samuel calmly replaced the receiver. He turned and looked directly at Dalton. Dalton stared, mouth open, eyes wide with panic. Who was that? He stammered. Samuel. Allowed himself a small, cold smile. I told you, officer. I called my son. The 5 minutes after the call were the longest of Lieutenant Corian's life. The moment Samuel hung up, the atmosphere underwent a chemical change, like pressure dropping before a hurricane. Casual chatter died. Keyboards stopped clicking. Everyone felt it. Something was terribly wrong. Dalton stumbled toward Corian's office, bumping into desks. Lieutenant, we have a problem. A big problem. What now? His son. He called his son. His son's name is Michael Sterling. Corian stared blankly. So what? Half the city is named, his voice trailed off. He looked at the booking sheet. Sterling. Then at the nameplate on the chief's office door. Michael Sterling, Chief of Police. The name's connected with the force of a car crash. Oh no, Corian whispered. No. He scrambled to his computer, typing frantically, running the prisoner through the deep link database. There it was. Samuel Aurelius Sterling. Emergency contact, Michael Sterling. Relationship, son. Corian felt blood drain from his face. They hadn't just arrested a citizen. They'd arrested the chief's father. They'd assaulted him. Cuffed him. Dalton had put his hands on the chief of police's 75-year-old father. Get him out of the cell, Corian ordered, voice panicked. Get him out now. Take the cuffs off. Get him coffee. The report, I already filed the preliminary, Dalton stammered. Delete it. It never happened. It was a mistake, a misunderstanding. But it was too late. The front desk radio crackled. All units, be advised. Chief Sterling en route to the 12th precinct, code 3. ETA 2 minutes. He's ordered full lockdown. No one in, no one out. Seal the doors. They froze. A lockdown by the chief himself. They were trapped inside with the man they'd victimized. And his son, their boss, the most powerful law enforcement officer in the city, was coming. The siren grew from distant cry to deafening roar, shaking the building's foundations. It wasn't a standard patrol siren, it was the deep bellow of the chief's command vehicle, reserved for officer down calls. A sound of crisis. The siren cut off as the black SUV screeched to a halt, parking halfway on the sidewalk. Chief Michael Sterling emerged, late 40s, built like a linebacker, moving with predatory grace. His face, usually composed, was a mask of cold, controlled fury. His eyes swept the precinct, and the guards at the door flinched. He didn't run. He walked with deliberate, unstoppable purpose. The officer inside fumbled with shaking hands to unlock the door, jumping back as the chief entered. The bullpen fell silent. Phones stopped ringing. Every officer froze, eyes fixed on their leader. They'd never seen him like this. This wasn't the chief who gave speeches, this was a son on the warpath. He ignored everyone, his gaze sweeping the room. He saw Lieutenant Corian in his office doorway, sweating. He saw Dalton trying to hide. Then he saw his father. Samuel stood by the booking desk, an officer removing his handcuffs. His purple silk shirt was torn at the collar. Dirt smudged his cheek. But he stood tall, dignity intact. The chief's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, seeing his father. Then his gaze snapped to Corian and Dalton, and the ice returned, harder than before. He walked past desks, footsteps echoing in the silence. He didn't shout. His voice, when he spoke, was a low, dangerous growl promising terrible consequences. Lieutenant Corian. Officer Dalton. Corian visibly trembled. Chief, sir, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. The misunderstanding, the chief said lethally soft, is that you think you'll still have jobs by the end of the hour. He turned slightly. Sergeant Henderson, you were on desk when my father was brought in. You will turn over the unedited booking video, audio logs, and complete body camera footage from Officer Dalton and Officer Evans. Now. And if I find a single frame altered or deleted, I will personally escort you to federal prison and charge you with obstruction myself. The command hung in the air, absolute and final. Henderson scrambled to comply, fingers fumbling on the keyboard, accessing the digital evidence locker. Chief Sterling turned to his father, gently taking his hands, inspecting the raw red welts from the over-tightened cuffs. A muscle twitched in his jaw, the only outward sign of volcanic rage beneath. "Are you all right, Dad?" he asked, voice stripped of official tone, filled only with a son's concern. "I'm fine, Michael," Samuel said calmly, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "A little bruised, a little disappointed in your hiring practices, but fine." The chief nodded. "We'll talk about that later. Right now, I need you to stand back. I have to clean my house." Henderson gave a slight nod, the files were ready. "Put it on the main monitors," the chief ordered, pointing to the large flat screens on the bullpen walls, normally used for statistics and wanted posters. Corian stepped forward desperately. "Chief, please, can we do this in my office? In private? You lost the privilege of privacy when you put your hands on a citizen without cause, Lieutenant. You made this a public spectacle in that garage. We're going to finish it publicly right here. Play it." The first video appeared, Dalton's body camera. The image was jerky. The audio clear. The entire precinct watched the scene unfold from the aggressor's viewpoint. They heard Dalton's contemptuous opening, "You think that fancy purple shirt makes you look like you belong here, Grandpa?" Shock washed over the room. The racism was blatant, casual. They watched Samuel calmly provide valid ID and registration. They saw his hands slow and visible. They saw him complying with every order. Then they saw the assault, Dalton wrenching the old man's arm, Samuel's sharp intake of breath as his injured shoulder twisted, the sickening click of handcuffs, Dalton's venomous whisper, "In my world, you're just another thug going to the cage." The video ended. Silence was thick with disgust. The next video started, booking area footage. They heard Henderson and Dalton mocking Samuel, Henderson falsifying the report. They saw the family link alert flash and heard Henderson dismiss it as a glitch. The conspiracy was laid bare. Dalton, trying to shrink into shadows, was now the focal point of dozens of accusing stares. He looked around wildly, a cornered animal. His eyes met Evans's. Evans looked away, face portraying guilt and shame. The final recording was audio, the phone call. Michael Sterling. "Michael, it's Dad." The simple, powerful words landed like a hammer. The suspect was the chief's father. The entire precinct had witnessed the illegal arrest and assault of their leader's own family. The magnitude of the mistake was catastrophic, career-ending, life-altering. The audio ended. Chief Sterling stood center room, letting the weight of evidence settle. He turned and faced the two men he'd once trusted. "You're done," he said. The chief's words echoed in the silent bullpen. Not a threat, a statement of fact, as final as a death certificate. Corian seemed to shrink. Dalton reacted with desperate, pathetic rage. He was suspicious, Dalton shouted, voice cracking, pointing at Samuel. He didn't look like he belonged there. "I was doing my job." Chief Sterling turned his head slowly, fixing Dalton with a gaze that could freeze fire. "Your job is to uphold the law, not enforce your prejudices. Your job is to protect and serve every citizen, not just the ones you think belong. You saw a black man in a nice car and you saw a crime. That doesn't make you a proactive cop, Dalton. It makes you a racist. And I don't employ racists." Every word was a nail in the coffin. The other officers looked at Dalton with open contempt. He hadn't just broken the law, he betrayed the badge. "And you, Lieutenant," the chief said, shifting to Corian. The lieutenant flinched. "You're worse. He's a thug with a chip on his shoulder. You're a commander who saw a crime being committed and your first instinct was to hide it. You tried to force a victim into signing a false confession. You haven't just failed as a leader, you've participated in criminal conspiracy. You're a disgrace to your rank." He turned to Officer Evans. "Officer Evans, you stood by. You watched this happen. You had a duty to intervene, and you failed." "Sir, Evans stammered, eyes welling. "I was scared." "We're all scared sometimes, son," the chief said, voice softening slightly. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing the right thing when you're terrified. You failed that test today, but unlike these two, you may get a chance to retake it. You're suspended indefinitely. You'll give a full statement to Internal Affairs, then go home and think long and hard about whether you have the character to wear this uniform." Evans nodded, tears streaming, a mixture of relief and shame. The chief turned back to the primary culprits. "Time for action. Sergeant Henderson, bring me their badges." The order carried the weight of an executioner's command. Stripping an officer's badge is the ultimate degradation. To have it done publicly by the chief himself was humiliation from which there was no recovery. Henderson, face grim, walked to Corian. He held out his hand. Corian, trembling, unpinned the lieutenant's shield and dropped it into Henderson's palm without eye contact. Henderson moved to Dalton. Dalton clutched the badge on his chest protectively. "Don't," he whispered. Henderson's face hardened. He reached out and with one sharp motion ripped the badge from Dalton's uniform. The pins tore through fabric with a sound like a ragged gasp. Henderson placed both shields in the chief's outstretched hand. Chief Sterling looked down at them with disgust, as if holding something unclean. He walked to Dalton, holding the shield before his face. "You do not deserve to wear this." He let it drop to the floor. It clattered loudly, echoing through the silent precinct, a sound of finality. He did the same with Corian's shield, dropping it beside Dalton's. The two symbols lay together on scuffed linoleum, worthless and disgraced. "Internal Affairs," the chief called. Two stone-faced detectives emerged from a back office. "Take these two into custody. Book them. Assault on a senior citizen, coercion, conspiracy to obstruct justice, civil rights violations under color of law. I want the DA's office to throw the entire book at them. No deals, no bail." The detectives moved in, treating the former officers like common criminals. They spun Dalton around, wrenching his arms behind his back the same way he'd done to Samuel, and cuffed him. Dalton sobbed as steel bit into his wrists. Corian put his hands behind his back without fight, spirit completely broken. As they were led past stunned colleagues toward the holding cells where they'd thrown Samuel an hour before, Dalton looked back wildly. His eyes found Samuel. "I didn't know," Dalton screamed desperately. "I swear, if I'd known who he was, I never would have." "That's the whole point, you fool," the chief cut him off, voice dripping contempt. "It shouldn't matter who he is. You're supposed to treat every citizen with respect, not just ones related to your boss. You failed the most fundamental test of being a police officer. Now you'll learn what it's like on the other side of these bars." The detectives dragged them out. The heavy door swung shut. The immediate crisis was over. The cancer had been cut out. Chief Sterling stood center room, the weight settling on his shoulders. He looked at his officers' faces, fear, disgust, uncertainty. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a long, painful process of rebuilding the trust two of his men had shattered in one afternoon. 6 months later, the mahogany-paneled courtroom of the United States District Court was worlds away from the precinct's grime. The air was quiet, heavy with the weight of federal law. The gallery was packed, reporters sketching furiously, concerned citizens, including the young man who'd filmed the arrest, his video now Exhibit A. At the defense table, Mark Dalton looked hollowed out, having lost weight, his suit hanging off slumped shoulders. The swagger was gone, replaced by the twitchy look of a man who knew his life was over. Beside him, former Lieutenant Gary Corian stared ahead, face a pasty mask. He'd accepted a plea bargain, agreeing to testify against Dalton in exchange for reduced sentencing, a man saving himself. In the gallery's front row sat Samuel Sterling in conservative charcoal gray. Beside him, his son Michael in civilian clothes. Not victims or commanders, citizens, father and son, bearing witness to the final act. All rise. Judge Eleanor Vance, formidable with a reputation for brilliance and severity, swept in and took the bench. She wasted no time. The jury had delivered a guilty verdict on all counts: deprivation of rights under color of law, perjury, conspiracy. This was sentencing. "Mr. Dalton," Judge Vance began, voice cutting through silence, "I've reviewed the evidence. I've watched the video of your actions multiple times. What strikes me, what sickens me, is not just the violence, but the joy you took in it. The smug satisfaction from tormenting and humiliating a 75-year-old man who'd done nothing wrong." Dalton flinched, refusing to meet her gaze. "Your defense argued this was a mistake, a lapse fueled by stress of a new city. I see no evidence of stress. I see evidence of malice. I see a man who uses his badge not as a shield to protect the innocent, but as a club to beat down anyone he deems unworthy. You spoke of your world, Mr. Dalton. Well, in my world, governed by the Constitution, you're nothing but a common criminal who hid behind a uniform." She paused, letting words hang. "This country's relationship with law enforcement balances on a knife's edge of trust. Every time an officer like you betrays that trust, you poison the well for every good officer doing their job with honor. You haven't just harmed Mr. Sterling. You've harmed every man and woman who wears a badge. The damage is incalculable." She looked down at sentencing guidelines, then back at Dalton. "For these crimes, for this profound and arrogant abuse of power given to you by this city's people, this court sentences you to the maximum allowable term under federal law." She looked directly at him. "Mark Dalton, you are hereby sentenced to 7 years in federal penitentiary." Collective gasps swept the courtroom. 7 years. No parole. A sentence of stunning severity, a clear message from the bench. Dalton's head dropped to the table as he began sobbing. "As for you, Mr. Corian," the judge said, turning icy gaze on the former lieutenant, "your crime was cowardice and corruption. You'll serve 3 years for your conspiracy role. Let it be a lesson to any supervisor who thinks their job is covering up crimes rather than preventing them." 2 U.S. Marshals pulled a weeping Dalton to his feet, cuffing his hands. As they led him away, he looked one last time at the gallery. His eyes met Samuel Sterling's. Samuel didn't look away. His expression wasn't triumph or revenge, it was deep, sorrowful gravity. The system had worked, but the cost had been immense. A year can change everything. Spring returned to the city, washing away winter's grit with warm rains and painting parks in vibrant green. The oppressive tension gripping the 12th precinct had been replaced by cautious, fragile renewal. The purge had been painful, Dozens fired or resigned in the federal investigation's wake. But what remained was a core determined to rebuild. Samuel Sterling sat on a park bench overlooking the city skyline, gentle breeze rustling oak leaves above. He held a simple paper coffee cup. The purple silk shirts remained wardrobe staples, but today he wore crisp white. A uniform of peace. A shadow fell over him. His son Michael stood there, out of uniform, wearing jeans and a polo shirt. He held coffee of his own and sat beside his father. For moments they said nothing, sharing silence and view, comfortable quiet forged over a lifetime of love and respect. "I got a letter from the warden at the federal facility," Michael said finally, voice low. "About Dalton." Samuel sipped coffee. "And?" "He's having a hard time. He's in solitary for his own protection. Other inmates don't take kindly to ex-cops, especially ones convicted of civil rights violations." Michael sighed heavily. "He spends days in a concrete box. I take no pleasure in that." "Neither do I," Samuel said, gaze on the distant horizon. "Justice's purpose isn't pleasure, son. It's balance. He tried to put me in a cage for his satisfaction. The world simply responded by putting him in one he earned." He paused. "His actions created consequences. That's the hardest lesson, and he's learning it now. His case is required reading at the academy now," Michael said, pride in his voice. "We call it the Sterling Standard. We teach rookies they must treat every single person they encounter, from the homeless man to the billionaire, as if they were the chief of police's father." Samuel smiled genuinely, warmly. "That's a good rule, but it's not about you or me." "I know," Michael nodded. "It's about the principle. Reminding them the badge doesn't put them above the people they serve. It puts them squarely and humbly in their service." They watched as a new police cruiser rolled slowly down the street bordering the park. The two officers inside, a man and woman, were laughing with a group of kids playing basketball. They weren't an occupying force, they were part of the neighborhood, part of the community they were sworn to protect. A small thing, a simple moment, but it was physical representation of the change their family's ordeal had brought. The wound was healing. Samuel placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You've done good work, Michael. You've honored the badge. You've honored our name." "I had a good teacher," Michael replied, voice thick with emotion. They finished their coffees as sun climbed higher. Two powerful men, father and son, thrust into fire and emerged not burned but forged anew, stronger and more committed than ever to the simple, radical idea that justice must be for everyone, or it is for no one at all. And so the quiet dignity of one man and the furious love of his son brought a corrupt system to its knees and reminded an entire city what true justice looks like. It's a story about the danger of prejudice and the immense courage it takes to stand up to it, even when you're the one holding all the power. What do you think? Was 7 years a fair sentence for Officer Dalton's actions? What would you have done if you were Officer Evans, the rookie partner caught between a bully and your conscience? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective is what makes this community great. If this story of justice and family spoke to you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that matter.